is something so powerful about truly knowing yourself. Not the version of you shaped by circumstances, not the version of you shaped by fear, but the version of you that was designed with intention, carrying divine purpose. The challenge is that too many of us have lived with distorted identities for so long that we've mistaken them for truth. We've called ourselves by names our pain has given us. We've worn labels that our past experiences have placed on us. And we wonder why negative emotions feel so overwhelming, why they seem to have so much power over us. But here's what I need you to know. Negative emotions only have power where there is ignorance. You cannot fight what you refuse to acknowledge. And for many, the battle is not the emotion itself. It is the fact that we have not taken the time to truly understand what is happening inside of us. Some of us wake up feeling heavy, but instead of asking why, we just accept it as our reality. Some of us carry insecurities, but instead of addressing their root, we just manage them. But you will never overcome what you simply manage. You cannot conquer what you have not confronted. There is a moment in life where you have to pause and say, who am I outside of this feeling? Because emotions can be loud, but they do not define you. When you feel rejected, that does not mean you are unworthy of love. When you feel anxious, that does not mean your future is doomed. When you feel discouraged, that does not mean hope is lost. Feelings are not final. But when we lack self-awareness, we allow them to become the foundation of how we see ourselves. This is why knowing you is a weapon. When you know yourself, when you understand the core of who you are, you gain authority over what tries to mislabel you. Think about it. If someone called you by the wrong name, you wouldn't accept it, right? You would immediately correct them because you know who you are. But what if I told you that the same principle applies to your emotions? When fear calls you incapable, you can correct it. When shame calls you broken, you can correct it. When doubt calls you unqualified, you can correct it. But you cannot correct what you have not identified as false. And this is where self-awareness changes everything. Self-awareness allows you to separate what you feel from who you are. It teaches you to pause before you accept a lie as truth. It gives you the discernment to say, this is how I feel, but this is not who I am. And that distinction is critical, because the moment you believe a feeling is your identity, you hand it the authority to shape your life. The enemy would love for you to live unaware. He would love for you to wake up every day accepting emotions as reality, never questioning, never challenging, never confronting, because as long as you do not know yourself, you will settle for anything that appears to be true. But I declare today that ignorance will not be your portion. Confusion will not be your portion. You will not be tossed back and forth by every emotion that arises. No. You will be anchored in truth. You will be rooted in clarity. You will be established in the knowledge of who you truly are. So what does this look like? It looks like getting quiet with yourself. It looks like asking the hard questions. It looks like tracing the origins of your emotions instead of simply reacting to them. It looks like recognizing patterns and saying, why does this always trigger me? What belief have I attached to this feeling? And is it even true? Because some of us have been carrying emotions that were never ours to carry. Some of us have been carrying narratives that were never true to begin with. And the moment you stop and recognize that, freedom is not in suppressing your emotions. It is in understanding them. It is in knowing that emotions can be valid, but not always accurate. It is in standing firm in your identity, even when your feelings tell a different story. Because the real you is not defined by what you feel in a moment. The real you is constant, unshaken, and established in truth. So today I challenge you to know you. Not just the surface level version, not just the version shaped by experiences, but the core of who you are. Because when you know you, no lie can stand against you. No emotion can dictate your destiny. No negative feeling can overpower the truth that has already been spoken about you. And that truth will set you free. There are moments in life when emotions rise so strongly that they feel like truth. Moments when fear tells you that you're not enough. When sadness convinces you that joy is impossible. When disappointment whispers that nothing will ever change. And if you're not careful, you start believing those voices. You start making decisions based on them. You start living in alignment with them. But here's what I need you to understand. Your emotions are messengers, not masters. Your feelings were never meant to lead you. They were meant to reveal something. If you take a moment and truly listen, your emotions will show you where healing is needed. They will point you to the wounds that have not yet been addressed. But what happens when you don't recognize this? What happens when you allow your emotions to dictate your life instead of informing it? You become a prisoner to how you feel in the moment. You allow temporary emotions to make permanent decisions. Imagine if every time the wind changed directions, you followed it. You would have no stability, no consistency, no clear path forward. That's what happens when we let emotions lead. One day we're confident, the next we're insecure. One moment we believe in our purpose, the next we're questioning everything. Not because our identity changed, not because the truth changed, but because we allowed emotions to dictate our reality. But what if I told you that just because you feel something does not mean you have to obey it? Just because fear rises doesn't mean you have to retreat. Just because sadness lingers doesn't mean joy is out of reach. Just because anger flares doesn't mean it has to control your response. You have been given authority over your emotions. You have the ability to acknowledge them without allowing them to rule you. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, I want you to pause and ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Instead of being consumed by it, observe it. Instead of reacting to it, reflect on it. Is the fear pointing to an area where you need to trust more? Is the sadness exposing a wound that still needs healing? Is the frustration revealing a place where boundaries need to be set? Emotions are indicators, not dictators. They are there to provide insight, not instruction. The enemy wants you to think that if you feel something, then it must be true. He wants you to believe that because you feel unworthy, you must be unworthy. Because you feel alone, you must be forgotten. But just because you feel it does not mean it is your reality. There is a greater truth, a truth that stands even when your emotions are unstable. The key is learning how to separate your emotions from your identity. You are not your sadness. You are not your anxiety. You are not your frustration. These emotions may visit, but they do not get to live in you. They may pass through, but they do not get to define you. You have the power to acknowledge them without adopting them as your truth. Then I get it. Some emotions feel so strong that they seem impossible to overcome. But strength is not found in pretending you don't feel something. Strength is found in acknowledging it without allowing it to control you. It's found in saying, yes, I feel this, but I am not this. It's found in choosing truth over temporary emotions. Because here's the thing, if emotions can change, then they cannot be your foundation. If what you feel today is not what you felt yesterday, then why would you let it define your life? You were created to be anchored in something greater than how you feel in a moment. You were created to be grounded in truth. And the truth is, you are more than what your emotions say. So today, I need you to take back authority. I need you to stop letting temporary emotions make permanent decisions. I need you to stop giving power to what was never meant to rule you. You have been given wisdom, discernment, and the ability to rise above what you feel in the moment. And when you do that, when you refuse to let emotions be your master, you step into the freedom that has always belonged to you. There will be moments when what you feel and what is true are not the same thing. Moments when your emotions tell you one story, but truth tells you another. And in those moments, you have to make a choice. Will you believe what you feel, or will you stand on what is true? Because emotions are real, but they are not always right. They may scream louder, they may demand more attention, but they do not have the final say. Think about how many times emotions have told you something that wasn't true, that because you felt overlooked, it meant you weren't valuable. That because you felt rejected, it meant you weren't worthy of love. That because you felt afraid, it meant you weren't capable. But just because you feel something doesn't mean it is the ultimate reality. Feelings shift, truth does not. There is a greater truth about who you are, one that is not dependent on how you feel in any given moment. And when you align yourself with truth instead of emotions, you become unshaken. Because the truth does not waver when life does. The truth does not crumble when fear comes. The truth does not change because your emotions do. But here's the challenge. So many of us have unknowingly built our lives around how we feel. We've allowed our emotions to determine our worth. We've allowed our emotions to shape our perspective. We've allowed our emotions to dictate our decisions. And as a result, we have lived in cycles of instability. Because anything that is built on emotions will always be fragile. You cannot build a strong life on an unstable foundation. And emotions, by their nature, are unstable. They fluctuate with circumstances. They shift with experiences. They are influenced by things outside of you. And if your life is led by them, you will always feel like you're being tossed back and forth, never fully secure, never fully at peace. But when you are rooted in truth, there is a confidence that remains, even when emotions try to pull you in a different direction. So what does this look like? It looks like making a decision that no matter how you feel, you will stand on what is true. That even when emotions say you are not enough, you will remind yourself that you were created with purpose. That even when emotions tell you that you are alone, you will stand firm in the truth that you are never forsaken. That even when emotions try to convince you that things will never change, you will hold on to the truth that there is always hope. This is not about denying your emotions. It is about refusing to let them define your reality. It is about acknowledging how you feel while still choosing to believe what is true. It is about recognizing that emotions are temporary, but truth is eternal. And I know that for some of you, this feels like a struggle because emotions have been your compass for so long. You've been so used to following how you feel that the idea of standing on something greater seems foreign. But can I tell you something? There is freedom in stepping beyond your emotions. There is freedom in realizing that your life does not have to be dictated by the rise and fall of what you feel. You are not powerless against your emotions. You are not a victim to what you feel. You have the ability to rise above temporary emotions and walk in truth. And when you do, you will find a strength that is unshakable, a peace that is unmovable, and a clarity that is undeniable. So today I challenge you to make a decision to no longer be led by emotions, but to be anchored in truth. A decision to stop allowing temporary feelings to shape your permanent identity. A decision to stand firm in what is real, even when emotions try to tell you otherwise. Because the truth about you is greater than what you feel in a moment. And when you live from that truth, you step into the fullness of who you were always meant to be. There's something so powerful about grace, something so transformative about knowing that you do not have to carry the weight of everything you've been through. That your past does not have to define you. That your mistakes do not have to be your identity. That even the deepest wounds in your life do not get the final say. Because grace does what nothing else can. It takes what was broken and makes it whole. It takes what was once a source of pain and turns it into a place of power. For so long, many of us have tried to heal through striving. We have tried to fix ourselves. try to outrun our past, try to force our way into wholeness. And in doing so, we have only exhausted ourselves. Because healing was never meant to be something you strive for. Healing is something you receive. Grace is not about earning your way into freedom. It is about allowing freedom to meet you where you are. Some of us have been carrying wounds for years, thinking that if we just ignore them long enough, they will disappear. But ignoring pain does not heal it. Suppressing emotions does not transform them. And yet, we live in a world that tells us to just move on, to just get over it, as if healing happens through avoidance. But true healing does not come from avoiding your pain. It comes from surrendering it. Because grace does not erase what happened, but it does redefine what it means for your life. That situation that tried to break you, grace turns it into a testimony of resilience. That rejection that made you feel unworthy, grace reminds you that your worth was never dependent on their acceptance. That pain that told you you'd never recover, grace steps in and says, this will not be the end of your story. There is nothing in your life that grace cannot transform. There is no wound too deep, no mistake too great, no past too heavy. But you have to be willing to let go of the idea that you can heal yourself. You have to be willing to surrender the need to control your own restoration and trust that grace will do what only it can. Healing is not about perfection. It is not about reaching a place where you never feel pain again. It is about allowing grace to meet you in the broken places and do a work that striving never could. Because grace does not demand that you be whole before you are worthy. It does not wait for you to have everything together before it steps in. Grace meets you right where you are, in the mess, in the confusion, in the hurt. And it says, even here, I will make you new. Some of us have been living under the weight of things we were never meant to carry, the weight of shame, the weight of guilt, the weight of regret. But grace lifts the weight. Grace says, you don't have to be bound by this anymore. Grace says, what happened to you will not define the rest of your life. Grace says, there is more to your story than this chapter. And I know that for some of you, it is hard to believe that healing is possible. It is hard to believe that after all you've been through, freedom is still available, but grace does not work according to what you feel. Grace works according to what is true. And the truth is, you were never meant to live bound by your past. You were never meant to live trapped in pain. You were created to be whole. You were created to be free. And when you allow grace to do its work in your life, that is exactly what you will become. So today, I need you to stop striving for what has already been given to you. I need you to stop carrying burdens that grace has already lifted. I need you to stop believing that your pain is your identity when healing has always been your portion. Because when grace steps in, everything changes. And the places that once held you in bondage will become the very places where you walk in power.